The alarm has not gone off yet. The room is still dim, the air still cool, and he is already sitting on the edge of the bed, reaching for his phone. It is a habit so old he does not notice it anymore. Check the news, scroll for a moment, maybe look at a text from one of the kids. 10 seconds, maybe 30. He does not feel anything unusual. His heart is already working harder than it should be, and he has no idea. There is a growing body of evidence, much of it coming from sleep medicine and cardiovascular research over the last decade, that the transition from sleep to waking is one of the most physiologically significant moments in a 24-hour day. It is a moment the body has very specific needs around, and yet, it is a moment most of us blow through without a second thought. This is not something that comes up during a standard annual physical. There is simply not time, but the gap between what the research shows and what most people over 60 have been told is wide enough that I feel a genuine responsibility to close it. My name is Dr. Evan Noris. I am a cardiologist with 23 years of clinical experience, with a particular focus on cardiovascular risk in adults over 60. What brought me to this specific topic is a pattern I began noticing in patients whose blood pressure readings at home, first thing in the morning, were consistently higher than their afternoon or evening numbers, and whose morning routines, when we examined them carefully, had something telling in common. Here is the biology, and I want to give it to you in plain terms because it genuinely matters. In the final stage of sleep, your body begins preparing to wake. Cortisol rises, adrenaline increases, blood pressure, which has been lower during the night, begins to climb naturally toward its daytime levels. This is called the morning surge, and it is a normal and necessary process. But in people over 60, two things make this surge more consequential. First, the artery walls become less flexible with age. Think of them like an old garden hose that has been left out through many summers. A new hose expands easily when the water pressure rises. An older one resists, and the pressure inside builds higher as a result. Second, the body's internal regulation system, the invisible GPS that tells your heart rate and blood vessels how to adjust to what you are doing, becomes a little slower to recalibrate after a sudden jolt. In younger adults, it corrects almost instantly. After 60, it needs a moment. What that means in practice is this. Anything that activates your stress response in the first few minutes of waking hits a cardiovascular system that is already at its daily pressure peak, inside vessels that are less forgiving, managed by a regulation system that is slower to correct. The result is a spike that in some people is measurably significant, and for those with existing hypertension or those already on blood pressure medication, it is worth understanding and discussing with your doctor. Before I walk you through the specific morning behaviors that contribute to this, I want to ask you something simple. In a typical morning, how long does it take you from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you get out of bed? Just type the number of minutes in the comments. 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10. I am genuinely interested in what this community's mornings look like. The first morning behavior I want to talk about is the one I opened with, and this is the 10-second mistake the title is referring to. Reaching for your phone within the very first moments of waking. 10 seconds. That is genuinely all it takes to set off a chain reaction inside your body that your cardiovascular system will spend the next hour trying to settle. This is so common it barely registers as a behavior anymore. It feels like simply existing in the morning. But what is happening inside your body when you do this is significant. Your eyes, which have been in darkness, are suddenly processing screen light. Your brain, which has been in a quiet, low stimulation state, is suddenly receiving information. News, notifications, a message that requires a response. The part of your brain that processes emotional content activates immediately. Cortisol and adrenaline, already elevated from the natural morning surge, get an additional push. For the body's internal regulation system in a younger adult, this is manageable. It corrects quickly, like a good GPS that reroutes without missing a beat. But after 60, that internal GPS is working more slowly. The correction takes longer, and in the meantime, pressure is elevated across vessels that are already less flexible than they used to be. A patient of mine named Desmond, a professional photographer who had spent decades waking before dawn to catch morning light, came to me with morning blood pressure readings that concerned both of us. His evening readings were fine. His midday readings were fine. But every morning, within the first 20 minutes of waking, his readings were significantly elevated. When we talked through his morning in detail, the phone was the first thing he touched, every single day. And the content he consumed first, news, weather, emails from clients, was consistently activating. We made one change. Phone stays face down until after breakfast. His morning readings shifted noticeably within 3 weeks. If you are on blood pressure medication, this is especially worth raising with your doctor, because your medication's effectiveness in the morning window can be influenced by how activated your stress response is when you first wake. The practical fix is as simple as it sounds. Put the phone across the room before you go to sleep, or make a firm rule that screens wait until you have been up for at least 20 minutes. Your heart will thank you for the buffer. The second behavior is one that feels like the opposite of harmful. It feels virtuous. And that is, jumping out of bed quickly and moving immediately into physical activity or a brisk walk. Exercise is unambiguously good for cardiovascular health. Morning exercise has real metabolic and mood benefits. I am not here to argue against any of that. What I want to address is the specific transition from horizontal to vertical, particularly when it happens rapidly. When you have been lying flat for 7 or 8 hours, your cardiovascular system has been distributing blood differently than it does when you are upright. The moment you stand, gravity pulls blood toward the lower body, and the heart, and that internal regulation system, must immediately compensate by increasing heart rate and tightening the blood vessels to maintain pressure to the brain. In younger adults, this happens almost instantaneously. The GPS recalculates in a split second. After 60, this compensation takes a beat longer. That delay is the window during which some people feel briefly lightheaded, and during which blood pressure can fluctuate in both directions before stabilizing. If, during that already unstable window, you add the physical demand of brisk walking or stair climbing, you are asking the cardiovascular system to manage multiple simultaneous adjustments at once. A woman named Sylvia, a former competitive swimmer in her late 60s, who maintained an admirable level of fitness, came to see me after 2 episodes of feeling unusually faint during her morning walk. She had been waking, dressing quickly, and heading out within 10 minutes of opening her eyes for years. Her cardiovascular health was actually excellent, but the transition was too abrupt for her morning physiology. We added a 10-minute quiet period before she left the house. The episode stopped. The fix is a transition ritual. Sit on the edge of the bed for 60 seconds before standing. Stand for another 60 before moving briskly, and give your body the runway it needs to adjust. If you take blood pressure medication in the morning, ask your doctor whether timing your dose before this transition window makes sense for your specific prescription. The third morning behavior is about temperature, specifically, the habit of stepping directly from sleep into a hot shower. Warmth feels soothing, and a hot shower is one of life's genuine small pleasures. I am not suggesting you give it up, but here's what happens inside your body when you move from the relatively cool air of a bedroom into hot water within minutes of waking. Heat causes the small blood vessels near the skin's surface to open up and widen. When that happens suddenly, blood redistributes away from the core of the body toward the skin. The heart responds by beating faster and harder to compensate and maintain pressure to the brain and vital organs. This is a significant demand, and it lands on a system that, as we have established, is already navigating the morning surge and adjusting from standing. In people with high blood pressure, or any stiffening of the arteries, those older garden hoses, this sequence can produce a pronounced pressure swing in a short window of time. I think about a patient named Warren, a former stonemason with hands that were more calloused than almost anyone I had ever treated. An extraordinarily physically capable man, who came to me after his wife noticed that he seemed unsteady some mornings after his shower. His blood pressure at those moments, when we eventually captured readings, was doing something dramatic. The fix in his case was gradual, starting the shower cooler and warming it slowly rather than stepping directly into hot water, and waiting at least 15 minutes after waking before showering at all. The steadiness returned. If you love your morning shower, keep it, but start lukewarm. Let the temperature rise slowly, and give yourself time to wake fully before you step in. If you are still here and finding this genuinely useful, type the word morning in the comments right now. It tells me this conversation is reaching the right people, and it helps the platform show it to others who could benefit. The fourth behavior involves something most people consider purely healthy: drinking a large glass of very cold water immediately upon waking, often before anything else. Hydration after sleep is genuinely important. Mild dehydration overnight is common and contributes to the blood being slightly thicker in the morning, which means the heart has to work a little harder to push it through. So the impulse to hydrate immediately is physiologically sound. The issue is the cold and the volume together. Think of it this way. Your body has been in a warm, quiet, settled state for hours. When a large volume of ice-cold liquid hits your stomach all at once, it is a sudden internal shock, like splashing cold water on someone who is just waking up. The body's calming system, startled by that shock, momentarily slows the heart. Then the body's alert system kicks back in hard to correct it. That back and forth, calm, then overcorrect, produces a pressure swing during a window when your cardiovascular system is already at its morning peak. A patient named Rosalind, a watercolor artist who described her morning routine as her most cherished part of the day, had been starting every morning with a large glass of ice water, something she had read was excellent for metabolism. Her blood pressure log showed a consistent spike in the 30 minutes after waking that she had never connected to anything in particular. When we looked at the timing, it aligned precisely with her cold water habit. Switching to room temperature water, consumed gradually rather than all at once, smoothed the pattern considerably. If you take a blood pressure medication first thing in the morning with water, this is a good question to bring to your doctor. Room temperature water is generally perfectly appropriate for taking medication and removes that unnecessary internal jolt. The fix: room temperature water, sipped over 5 to 10 minutes rather than consumed in one go. The fifth morning behavior is perhaps the subtlest, and it involves the emotional and cognitive content of the very first thoughts you allow your mind to engage with upon waking. Many people, and this is especially true for people who are managing health concerns, financial worries, or family stresses, wake into anxiety before they are fully conscious. The moment awareness returns, the to-do list arrives. The worry about the appointment next week, the unresolved conversation with an adult child, the financial concern that has no clean resolution. This is not a character flaw. It is what an active, caring, responsible mind does. But when your brain starts processing stress and worry in the very first moments of waking, it adds fuel to a cortisol fire that is already burning from the natural morning surge. Research published by groups at Carnegie Mellon University and the University of California, examining the relationship between psychological stress and morning cortisol, has documented that anticipatory worry, stress about what is coming rather than what is happening right now, produces a cortisol response comparable to acute stress. When that lands on top of the morning surge, in arteries that have less flexibility, managed by an internal regulation system that is slower to recalibrate, the pressure consequences are measurable. A retired maritime cartographer named Bernard came to me not because he felt unwell, but because his home blood pressure monitor had begun alarming him consistently in the mornings. He was a methodical man. He kept a detailed log. The readings were highest on days before medical appointments, family gatherings, or any logistical complexity. The first thing his mind did every morning was inventory the day's challenges. We worked on a brief morning anchor practice. 2 minutes of slow breathing before engaging with any thought about the day ahead. The readings over time shifted in a meaningful direction. The fix is not meditation as a philosophy. It is simply delaying the cognitive load of the day by 2 to 5 minutes using slow, deliberate breathing, which activates your body's calming system and provides a small but real buffer between the sleeping brain and the thinking brain. Here's what I want you to do starting tonight, and I want to say this as plainly and warmly as I can, as if we are sitting across from each other, and I am handing you something you can actually use. I also want to make this easy to write down, because these 6 steps work best when they become a real routine. Step 1. Tonight, put your phone somewhere other than your bedside table, across the room, in another room, wherever it needs to be so that it is not the first thing your hand reaches for. Step 2. Tomorrow morning, when you wake, sit with it for a full 60 seconds before you stand. Step 3. When you stand, take another 60 seconds before you move briskly anywhere. Let your body's internal GPS recalibrate before you ask it to navigate. Step 4. If you shower in the morning, start the water cooler than you normally would, and let it warm around you rather than stepping directly into heat. Step 5. When you hydrate, use room temperature water and drink it slowly over 5 to 10 minutes, rather than all at once. Step 6. Before you let your mind go to the day, give yourself 2 minutes of slow breathing. In for 4 counts, out for 6, before you engage with a single worry or task. That is the complete morning protocol. It costs nothing. It adds perhaps 10 minutes to your morning, and for a cardiovascular system over 60, navigating the most pressure-sensitive window of the day, those 10 minutes are genuinely protective. If you are currently on blood pressure medication, bring this list to your next appointment and ask your doctor how these habits fit alongside your medication timing. That conversation could matter more than you expect. Everything I have shared here is meant to open a conversation with your own physician, not replace one. Your health history, your medications, and your individual cardiovascular picture all matter in ways I cannot assess from here. Please bring these ideas to your doctor as a partner. They can help you figure out which of these changes are most relevant for you specifically, and how to track whether they are making a real difference. And if your mornings are something you want to understand even more deeply, the next thing I want to walk you through is what your blood pressure is doing while you sleep, and why what happens between midnight and 5 in the morning may matter more than your daytime numbers.